Happy New Year's Eve, everyone. Welcome to a brand new edition of the Media Row podcast. I'm your host, Justin Miller. Thank you for tuning in. Hopefully we can have a fun New Year's Eve day together to get you ready for what will be a fun night to really kickstart 2026 off correctly. I know Megan and I and our friends, we have our plans all finally finalized for tonight. We were in like 4 different group chats, which they're with the same people for one thing, which drives me up a wall. But I already hate group chats to begin with. And everyone's just talking about like, whose house are we using? Who's bringing what? Like just all these questions. And I know this is probably selfish of me, but I'm sitting there like, I care about 2 things. First and foremost, I need a TV to watch the Ohio State Miami game. Secondly, I just want to hang out. So let's just agree on a place and settle it. So that was about a week. We've been discussing that, but finally found a place to hang out with, and we're going to have a lot of fun. Hope you guys have a fun and safe New Year's Eve night so that your 2026 starts off on a high note. And we're going to have a lot of fun in our final show of 2025 because we have a lot to get to, especially with the Drake men's basketball team, where you have the good, the bad, the ugly, the disappointing, the infuriating, the improving, the confusing, the concerning, whatever you want to call it. Drake men's basketball team, after they suffered their worst loss of the season, in my opinion, Monday night, a game we were at live and covering. And so you'll hear from Coach Henderson in just a few moments talking about that loss. So we'll dive first into that, but then we'll jump into the Drake women, who on the flip side of things, they are showing great improvement. They're 2-0 in the Missouri Valley, and both wins coming on the road. Monday in an early game in UIC, they come off with another big and just strong victory on the road against the Flames. So we'll do a deep dive on both Drake games as we recap those. And then it's that time of the year where we're in full swing with the Missouri Valley Conference play. So we're going to give both the men and women Missouri Valley Conference standings, just an update, see where Drake is in those standings and kind of the top teams so far early on in this early conference season. Then, of course, finish up with our college football playoff picks and predictions. But before we get to any of that, first and foremost, if you guys have yet to subscribe, like, comment, rate, or whatever you need to do, make sure to do that for us. We've seen the numbers grow greatly in our first year, and it's all because of you guys. And we just want to continue to see those numbers grow and continue to grow this Media Row family. So it all starts by just a click of a button. So go ahead, click subscribe wherever you are viewing or listening to today's show. And then, of course, follow us all over social media. Busy on Monday night, where we were fortunate enough to hang out with the Iowa Everywhere guys and Andrew Downs and Jake Bren on buckets. A huge thank you, first and foremost, to Iowa Everywhere and Andrew Downs and Jake Bren for having me on. Love those guys. They're great friends and supporters of the show. And AD, of course, being the best boss I've ever had in my life. It was awesome to catch back up with them. And it was awesome, even though the Drake game didn't go the way I wanted it to. It was awesome to just see hype around Drake, because I told them on the show, it was awesome to see other local media covering Drake, because growing up a diehard Drake fan, they were forgotten about. You didn't see other podcasts and other local media groups coming out to the Knapp Center for an 8:00 Monday night tip during the Giacoletti years, during the Phelps years. You just didn't see it happening. So it was awesome to catch up with those guys. And so if you are not following us on Twitter or Instagram or TikTok at Media Row Pod, you could have missed all the highlights from those shows, along with clips, interacting with other listeners and Drake fans. And then, of course, our interviews with Coach Henderson, where we'll play a few clips on today's show. But if you want to catch the full interview, you have to follow us on Twitter at MediaRowPod. So make sure to do that. And then lastly, make sure you get over there to 1701 East Grand Avenue in Des Moines to support our supporting sponsor in Kelly's Little Nipper. This whole show and what we do here, a lot of the support we get starts with Kelly's Little Nipper. They were the first company to hop on with us, and we greatly appreciate them, and we want you guys to go support them at 1701 East Grand Avenue in Des Moines with New Year's Eve happy hour prices all day long. So go check them out at 1701 East Grand Avenue in Des Moines. Kelly's Little Nipper, proud sponsor of the Media Row podcast. So let's jump into today's show, starting with the game we were at on Monday night as the Drake Bulldogs fall in brutal fashion against Illinois State, 73-56 at home, 1-2 now in the Missouri Valley. And in my opinion, this was their worst loss of the year so far in just the fashion it happened. And again, just not being able to protect home court. And I want to start by recapping this game by talking about a tweet I saw from friend of the show and someone that we want to get on the show, and Nick McCarter, because just 3 weeks ago, Nick and I had a discussion about how, we disagreed on the outlook of the early portion of the season. He was a fan that voiced his frustrations and showed it by leaving a game early. I'm typically a very positive and glass half full kind of fan. So I was saying, no, give this time, give Henderson time. But he mentioned in his tweet saying, there's no way to spin this. And he is kind of right. The way and the fashion Drake lost to Illinois State was very telling. And truly what concerned me most about this loss to Illinois State was just how Drake failed to respond. The second half, Illinois State comes out and makes all of their first 4 shots, and they really punch Drake in the mouth to begin the second half. And for the first time this year, we saw this Drake team truly panic. In the first half, even though the shots weren't falling, Drake shot 8% from behind the 3-point line in that first half. I was very pleased with the ball movement and the offensive progressions we were seeing. The ball movement, the off-screen cuts we were seeing by players. Drake was getting great looks. It was just chalked down to bad luck. I mean, I think I can count on one hand. I think it was like 3 possessions that ended where I was like, I don't like that shot. But other than that, every other possession, even though the shots didn't fall in that first half, I was happy with. And you have to just sit there believing at some point they have to start falling. The lid has to come off. In the second half, once they got punched in the mouth, you saw that panic and you saw them just completely abandon their offensive strategy that was working in that first half and keeping a really good Illinois State team at arm's length. And in that second half, Drake just never responded well. And we haven't seen that all year long, because one of the things that I've been talking about, even though Drake was on these losing streaks and not winning games they should have, or losing to Murray State and LSU, their average margin of defeat was 5.5 points. They weren't getting blown out by teams. I know they should have beat North Dakota State, and you expect them to beat UAB at home. They lost both of those games by 5 points. And then against LSU and Murray State, they lost only by 9. And those are some really talented teams they lost to. So they're not getting blown out. Until Illinois State, and it's all because they didn't respond well at all to the adversity. They completely abandoned their offensive game plan. And I can live with good looks and shots that just don't fall, but it just seemed like they just bailed on that and panicked. So, yes, this was a very telling loss. And it is the most concerning loss of the season, in my opinion, because this is stacking you up against a preseason favorite in the Missouri Valley and a team that is playing like they are going to be the favorite in St. Louis. And when you play those teams at home and when you force 23 turnovers, you have to at least make it look respectable. You want to see that gap between a preseason favorite and the Drake Bulldogs. You want to see it closer. And right now it just seems like Drake is falling and falling fast. It was a typical tale of two halves. We mentioned that first half where Drake was only down 4 at halftime. And they had completely taken Chase Walker and they had taken Brandon Lieb completely out of the game. Both players had 2 fouls in the first half. But in that second half, Walker and Kingsinger, it was like they said, hold my beer. We had our fun. We played with our food for a little bit in the first half. Now we're going to show everyone in this building why we're the preseason favorite. And they played so fundamentally sound. Drake didn't play awful defense. They did really struggle around the perimeter. I don't know if it was miscommunication. I don't know if it was just the ball, the cliche of the ball moves faster than the players and they just couldn't catch up. But Illinois State, they couldn't miss. They knocked Drake right in the face out of the gates. Literally, I saw something I've never seen live in a basketball game. And it happened early in the second half where Walker goes up, Federico fouls him, and Walker clips him, a little in the mouth. You see that all the time. But I'm sitting there with Alyssa Hurdle from the Register, and we're talking like, oh man, Drake really needs to get something moving here. And then as we're talking, we look down, and Federico picks up something small and white from the floor. And we're both like, that's not what I think it is. No way. And then he goes to the bench and he's got gauze in his mouth. And I see one of the trainers give him a little like Ziploc plastic baggie. And we're like, oh my God, that's his tooth. So Federico loses a tooth. He had to sit out quite a bit. And that did hurt Drake because I praised Griffin Goodberry. He's a true freshman. He has played up against competition. I thought he played really good against Connor Turnbull the last time out against Evansville. Had one of his best games of the year against LSU, a much taller team and more physical team. So I did expect him to perform better than he did against Chase Walker. But Chase Walker is a man and is one of the best, if not the best post player in the Valley. And he proved it, especially when Federico had to sit out and Illinois State just dumped it down to him. I mean, it was fundamental, and it was exactly what Illinois State needed to do to win that game. They shot 78% from the field goal and from the three-point line. 7 of 9 from three-point. They only missed 4 shots all second half. They played like a true preseason favorite. They in that second half, that's the Illinois State team I've been waiting to see all year long, where that is why I picked them to be my preseason favorite a few months ago, because there's just so many different ways they can beat you. And the ball movement, when they get that ball swinging, it is really hard for defenses to catch up, as we saw for Drake, who, man, the perimeter defense was just non-existent on Monday night. And so you not only have a team that can't miss from 3, 7 of 9, can't miss from anywhere on the floor, and they just dominate in the paint. They dominate in that second half, 42-29. They dominate the rebounding game. And it's just disappointing because you look at that box score and you see 23 turnovers that Drake forces, and you force that many turnovers and you still lose by 17. Just very disappointing. I wanted to play this clip from Coach Henderson because in that second half, I know I mentioned the way the offense kind of abandoned their game plan in that second half after they panicked. But that perimeter defense was really hard to watch. And I asked Coach Henderson, what was it that Illinois State was doing or Drake wasn't doing that challenged your defense, especially around that perimeter? You watch that second half, and it seems like the issues we saw early in the year where we chalked it all on, hey, new team, new roster, brand new season. You're going to have miscommunication errors. At this point, nearing January, you're in conference play. I've been very lenient and been very understanding, and I think have had a realistic mindset when it comes to this Drake team about just it's going to take time and it's building blocks to St. Louis. Nothing is, you don't lose to Illinois State or beat Illinois State and say, all right, we're locked into the NCAA tournament. It's just not the nature of college basketball, and especially not the nature of the Missouri Valley with it being a one-bid league. I will say, seeing communication errors or just seeing the way Drake played that perimeter in that second half was very disappointing, and it really makes you nervous moving forward because there's a lot of really good three-point shooting teams. We're going to talk about the Missouri Valley Conference standings and Murray State, who Drake has already lost to. We know how good they can shoot threes. Belmont continues to just be a three-point beast. But you have teams like Indiana State that just beat Belmont the other night, and it's going to need to be fixed if Drake is going to be able to compete moving forward. So I asked Coach Henderson about the perimeter defense, and here's Coach's answer.
I mean, their spacing I thought was a little bit better in the second half, but at the end of the day, they just played through, their best player. Chase is such a talented kid. He can pass it. He can, obviously score around the basket, but his unselfishness is just terrific, and he puts so much pressure on your defense. Got deep catches, and we were doing a good job of surrounding him in the second half, and I just thought he got too deep of catches early in that second half, and that's where that physicality piece comes into play. But it really wasn't tricky. It was just saying, okay, we got the preseason player of the year. We're going to throw it to him, and we're going to play through him, and they did.
So Drake falls to 7-7 on the year, 1-2 in the Valley. They have Indiana State coming up next Sunday, who just upset Belmont in a game we're going to recap here in just a few moments. But I do want to touch on one thing, and that is, I do social media and I hop on with Trav and Ross each morning, and you can catch them on therushradio.com and wherever you get your podcasts. And Travis asked me a really good question today. And it was, is Drake a bad team? And I sat there and I kind of talked in circles, I'll be honest, for a couple of seconds because I was buying time thinking about that question. That's a tough question. I don't think this is a bad team. But in terms of what you expected, this is definitely not what we expected, even for me. And I've disagreed with a couple of Drake fans on social media because I've been very understanding, I think, of Henderson's spot of this is a new roster. Drake has been very fortunate with the last handful of coaches. You're not going to strike gold every time. It's going to take time to rebuild. But I did not see a 7-7. I did not see a 1-2 Valley start by any means. So I do believe that in the terms of what we expected, Drake is falling short of those expectations. Long season ahead. Again, I am a true believer in, do you want to win another regular season title? Absolutely. Am I disappointed with these losses? Yes. I'm a diehard Drake fan. I have an Adam Emenecker jersey right behind me. I wore 15 in junior high and high school because I'm infatuated with Drake. Love this team. So yes, it does hurt seeing them lose. But at the same time, nature of college basketball, Missouri Valley being a one-bid league, it's building blocks to St. Louis. Those are the games. And we just need to start seeing improvements, and we really need to start seeing those wins follow. That was a very disheartening loss to Illinois State. I didn't expect Drake to win, but I didn't expect to be shown that there may be a bigger gap than we'd like to admit between the teams at the top and Drake. So Drake, 7-7, 1-2 in the Missouri Valley. Indiana State up next Sunday. And we'll move on to the Missouri Valley Conference standings as we sit here on New Year's Eve and begin with the Indiana State upset, because that was an incredible game. Came back home from the Knapp Center, saw it, the scoreboard. So as I'm prepping for today's show, I just had it on. And watching what Indiana State and Belmont did, that was a heavyweight battle. And you have Indiana State, a team without their head coach, and you have a team that has had a very similar track to Valley play in the non-con as Drake did, where they're just kind of sitting right above or right below 500 for the most part. But a huge upset as they take down Belmont 81-80 in overtime. And you had a Bruins team that led by as much as 11, and you look on paper, because right away I pull up the box score. I'm like, man, Belmont, a team that we know lives by the 3, die by the 3, but this year had seemed to be more balanced. I was expecting them to shoot awful from the 3-point line. They didn't shoot that bad. And it felt like it was just a call and response type game where there wasn't really truly one big number. They didn't force 23 turnovers. Indiana State didn't, like Drake did against Illinois State. You didn't see anything like that. But speaking of turnovers, the 16 by Belmont, they all just were very costly. I mean, they forced a handful of turnovers by Indiana State as well, so it wasn't a huge disparity between the two teams in the turnover chart, but the ones that Belmont committed were very costly, and that is what led to Indiana State's 81-80 overtime thrilling victory. I thought also a stat to mention, Indiana State did a fantastic job moving the ball around, really put some pressure on Belmont. They had 24 assists on 28 made shots. Incredible ball movement by Indiana State. And again, a team that we'll do more of a deep dive on Friday's show to preview for Sunday's matchup between Drake. But after we just spoke about the perimeter defensive headaches and issues we saw from Drake on Monday, you now have to start kind of sweating a little as a Drake fan when you have to go up against an Indiana State squad that has proven just how good they can move the ball against a really good team in Belmont. Belmont is, again, I think it's Illinois State as still my preseason favorite. 1A, but 1B is Belmont right behind them. Real quick, to finish up our Indiana State Belmont talk, you have Camp Wagner finishing with 17 points, 3 assists, 3 rebounds, and 2 steals. Just really did just about everything he could on the floor. So huge game out of Wagner and a huge upset win for Indiana State. You also have UNI bouncing back with a victory against Valpo, 58-48. And then to finish up these standings, you have Bradley with their 7th straight Missouri Valley Conference win as they tie Murray State for the longest win streak in the conference. Both Murray State and Bradley are 3-0. You're just seeing Brian Wardle do what he does best. And I think what a lot of Drake fans were hoping we'd start to see from Henderson and this Drake squad is just a group gelling together. Because we talked about it in our preseason show with the Valley about Wardle and how this is a very young group. And he mentioned those concerns. But he did say that by Christmas, he will have this team figured out. And that could mean one of two things, he said. He said it could be figuring them out in a good way or figuring out that, man, maybe this team just doesn't have it this year. We're just going to have to kind of really work to be competitive. And it seems like it's the first option. It seems like he has really found a stride with this team, and this team is playing some really good basketball at a really good time. Not saying the best time. The best time is that first week in March in St. Louis, but a really good start to the Missouri Valley for Bradley and, of course, Murray State, who is fantastic to watch as well. And to wrap up the standing update for the men's side, you really have 5 teams pushing for first place right now. And it's going to be a really fun stretch here in the next few weeks as you start to see who's going to start separating themselves out of those 5. Who's going to be the top dog in this conference? Because between Belmont, UNI, Bradley, Murray State, and Illinois State, seems like it could be anyone's day on any given night. So those are our Missouri Valley Conference standings. Drake will get an opportunity to improve to 2-2 and get a big win at home against Indiana State on Sunday at 2:00. We'll, of course, be covering that game live. So follow along on social media. And then we get to cover the Drake women. It feels like it's been a month since we've been able to cover the Drake women live, but they are coming back home on Friday as they get ready to play Southern Illinois. Southern Illinois, not great, 3-8, but still another great opportunity for the Drake women, who get their second straight Valley victory on the road too against UIC, 78-62. And man, Pullman is showing everyone why she is such a good coach, because it was a really tough non-con. And after, I believe it was the Lindenwood loss, I had listeners and fans come up to me and ask, what's going on with this team? And I was very much similar with the men, where I was like, let's sit back, give Pullman time. And I was really confident with Pullman because of that track record. She is a really talented coach and a smart coach, and she's proving why she's just so damn good. And you're seeing this Bulldog team really gel. And we mentioned it a few shows ago I am now to the point after that Indiana State victory, and now really especially against this victory against UIC, I'm to the point with this Drake women's team, I'm throwing the non-con in the trash. I'm not even thinking about those games when looking at Valley play and moving forward, because it feels like 2 different leagues. I mean, they're playing Iowa State, Iowa, Creighton, who is a top 4 projected team in the Big East, a Minnesota team that we saw just how good they can be. And so, yeah, you're not going to be playing teams like that in the Missouri Valley every night. I don't think it's fair to look at those games and be like, man, how's this team going to compete in the Valley? It's almost 2 different leagues. So I'm throwing that in the trash, and we're just seeing in these Valley games kind of what to expect from this Drake team in the conference play. So to start off with this UIC game, the first and foremost thing I want to get to is just how well Drake controlled the game with their ball movement. From the tip, Drake took over on the road. And this was a noon tip-off where it's kind of early, especially when everyone's coming off holiday break. But Drake came out of the gates firing and looked efficient, looked in control, never looked panicked, never wavered. Even though Drake was in control this whole time, UIC would cut the lead down to about 4 or even 1 possession. And Drake just kind of went, all right, let's just keep doing what we're doing, and took over and was not fazed by what is a top 3 defense in the Missouri Valley. Drake shot 48% from the field and hit 12 threes. And what was so incredible was we knew this UIC team was talented defensively. We did not really expect just how much they were going to be challenged by Pullman's offensive scheme. We've talked about it a lot on the show of how Pullman likes to get the ball and just run. I mean, sure, you might turn over the ball a little more than you'd want to see with that fast pace, but that is her style. Get the ball, rip down the boards, and outlet pass it to Hawthorne, Alsma, whoever's down there, and let's put this defense on their heels. They really did that against UIC. UIC stood no chance in that pace. And Drake, with the fashion they started the game at and the way they were able to consistently play at that level, they made UIC have to play at that high speed and high caliber pace. So offensively incredible. And you had 29 assists on 31 made shots. That's beautiful basketball to watch. It really is. Go back and watch that Indiana State Belmont game where we brought up how well they moved the ball. Go back and watch this Drake women's game. It is just beautiful. The backdoor cuts, the inside out game, the pick and roll, the pick and pops. When you're moving the ball with that efficiency, you can just attack a team from so many different levels and so many different angles. And they really put one of the best Valley defenses on their heels. And then Drake, a team where we know Pullman's offensive scheme is to get out and run. They hadn't proven to be a fantastic defensive team. We knew they can compete, but this was really kind of the first time we saw their defensive aggressiveness take over a game as well and balance out with how well their offense was playing. You had this Drake defense held UIC to 1 3-pointer all day long. That is impressive. That is very impressive. And then on top of that, just what this offense did was amazing. Also very impressive was the game from Abby Alsma. We have spoken time and time again on this show about just how good she is for Pullman's system and just how dominant she is. She played great against Creighton and against Iowa State. When you have the 29 assists on 31 made shots, when you have other people getting involved, it allows her to do what she does best, and that is pick and pop, spot up shooter. And she was able to have a career day, 30 points, 12 of 19 from the field, just was able to get to her spots because of the balance attack Drake had. And so that is the biggest key for her as an individual, in my opinion, moving forward for this Drake team. And I just want to end here with the Drake women. Just love the growth. We talked about, pumping the brakes. I know it was a tough non-con. It was the worst start since Lisa Bluter's first year for a Drake women's team. But that is a very difficult non-con for the Drake women. And now after 2 really strong victories in the Valley, they win both games on the road by 16 or more, dominate these games. This is what I'm expecting moving forward. No, I'm not expecting 20-point victories. I'm not even expecting them to win every Valley game, but I'm expecting that cohesiveness as a unit for Drake. I am really interested because UIC is a good defensive team, not a great offensive team. Sat with a 500 record before Monday's game. Not a great team in the Missouri Valley by any means. And then same with Indiana State, where I am interested to see when we will see this Drake team balance out and stack themselves against, the Belmont and Murray State type of teams that we do expect to be on top of this conference moving forward. So Drake women will take on SIU on Friday. We will, of course, be at that game live at the Knapp Center. And then before we get to our college football playoff picks and previews, need to go through the Missouri Valley women's basketball standings here on New Year's Eve. You have 5 teams unbeaten in conference play. Of course, UNI, Belmont, and Drake all sit with 2-0. You have Murray State, who are 10-2 overall, just absolutely the most dominant team in the conference right now. They're the preseason favorite for a reason. They sit in the Missouri Valley with a 1-0 conference record along with Bradley. So very balanced. I mean, we're very much so like the men. You have about 5 teams really battling here in the conference play early on, but you're expecting to start to see a little bit of that separation. And that's why I'm really eager to see where Drake stacks up, because through these 2 games, Drake, I think, has proved to everyone to follow my lead of throw that non-con in the trash and just look at these conference games and tell me that's not a top 3 conference team in the Valley. So Drake, SIU on Friday. You have the Drake men on Sunday against Indiana State. Hopefully, we shall see another victory for the women and maybe some improvements and a big home victory for the men. We will preview those games more in depth on Friday's show. Let's finish our 2025 show with a bang with our college football playoff picks and previews. In the first round, the only one we got wrong was the Texas A&M and Miami game. I did have Texas A&M winning that. And let's start with the game that Miami will be playing in since they beat Texas A&M. Congratulations, Hurricanes. You were able to beat A&M in what was such an ugly and boring game. I don't know which one was uglier to watch, the Iowa Bucknell game I was covering live or the Texas A&M Miami game. But congratulations. Now you have to face a pissed off Ohio State team who has had to sit for the last few weeks reminiscing about that Big Ten championship loss. I don't know how anyone can have any sort of confidence in Miami tonight, because you have this Ohio State team that is so dominant on so many different levels, both offensively and defensively, where there's not a single spot the Hurricanes have an advantage on. Maybe you can argue a little bit about Miami's defensive line, which is good, but I still would take Ohio State. I would take any position over Miami from Ohio State. Beck worries me to my core with turnovers and just big games. It wouldn't be crazy to expect this Ohio State defense that is so legit to force at least two turnovers versus Miami. And that's what I'm going to expect tonight. I think you have an Ohio State team that was proven to themselves that they're not invincible. And I think you can take that as a positive. Not only just because of what happened last year where Ohio State went on that huge run to win the title after an embarrassing loss to Michigan, but just to kind of bring a team back to earth that had been sitting in first place all year long. I think that is beneficial to Ohio State. They've had to sit for the last 2 weeks pissed off. All Ohio State has to do, of course, easier said than done, but keep Julian saying upright and everything will be all right for Ohio State. So give me Ohio State. Give me the points. Ohio State favored by 9.5. So I think Ohio State moves forward. Let's move on now to the Rose Bowl, where you have Bama taking on Indiana. Indiana, a 7-point favorite. It is really such a crazy story of Indiana, where you have Curt Cignetti, who was under the Nick Saban coaching tree, coached at Alabama. Now he gets to face his former team, coaching Indiana, which I know it feels like everyone has just kind of accepted of like, oh yeah, after 2 years and 2 straight college football playoff appearances, there's Indiana and Curt Cignetti. It's still an amazing story and crazy that Indiana is in this spot, is the number 1 team in the college football playoffs. What Cignetti has done in such a short amount of time is incredible. And this team is really talented. I think Indiana, I don't want to say handles. I think Bama can keep it close. But I really like Indiana. I think this is a chalk game. Give me Indiana taking down Bama in the Rose Bowl and just continuing the Hoosiers' amazing story of 2025. And then another game I believe will be chalk is the Sugar Bowl. Give me Georgia and the points. They're favored by 6.5 against Ole Miss. Ole Miss, I think, would be a fun story if they were able to make a push, of course, with the Lane Kiffin drama. But I just don't see it happening. You have an interim head coach with the headset going up against Georgia, who has been there, has done it, has won multiple titles. So I think experience here is going to be vital. And I think Georgia, their defensive, just physicality is so strong. So those are mostly chalk. The Ohio State, Indiana, Georgia picks, it feels like the first round where there's really only one game where I sit there and kind of am stumped a little. And that's with the Capital One Bowl, where you have Texas Tech taking on number 5 Oregon. Everyone's really hyped about Texas Tech. And a lot of people, who watched a lot of Big 12 games. You have Chris Williams, and all those guys a part of Cyclone Fanatic have really told a lot of people of watch out for Texas Tech. I've watched them a couple of times, and I see it. I see why they're ranked 4th. I get it. Something in my gut tells me not every team that is favored is going to win or that is ranked higher. I guess Oregon is favored by 2.5. But that is ranked higher is going to move forward. And I like Lanning. I say it every time I preview Oregon. I know you're probably sick of it, but I really think it is a critical factor in these games. Same reason I'm picking Georgia over Ole Miss is because of the experience. And I think Oregon and Dan Lanning, they are the better team than Texas Tech. I know they haven't looked like it, but man, on paper, I really think Texas Tech could struggle. I think Texas Tech has the defense to compete. This is going to be a tight game. I think it's going to be a low-scoring game. I see it being a 23-21, 23-20 type win for Oregon. So give me the Ducks taking down Texas Tech in my, I don't know, do you call it an upset? I guess Oregon is picked by 2.5 by DraftKings, but Texas Tech is ranked higher. But so those are my picks. We missed one in the first round. Hopefully we do much better here in the next round as we have Ohio State, Oregon, Indiana, and Georgia all advancing to the college football playoff semifinals. So that will do it for our picks and previews. That will do it for our show. A great and fun end to 2025. Our first year anniversary is coming up on Friday's show. So I'll talk more about that on Friday. But I do just want to say thank you to each and every one of you for hanging out with us in 2025. I know we started off January last year saying 2025 was going to be the year of Media Row, and you guys made it feel that way. The support from everyone who listens, follows, all of that really means the world to me, and it has been a really fun ride, and it's not coming close to an end. So looking forward to spending the rest of 2026 with you guys as well. And we will catch up with you on Friday, our 1-year anniversary of the Media Row podcast, where we will recap, of course, the college football playoffs and then preview what will be a fun weekend of Drake hoops. We'll see you on Friday for another edition of the Media Row podcast.